We are the Thunderbolts!
Yeah, I've been a fan and lucky enough that my college roommate, John Watts, directed all of the Spider-Man movies. So I'd actually gotten to work on Homecoming just for the LA portion. Did second unit of those pickups. So I'd gotten to know the folks at Marvel through that. And I mean, I think anytime you get to work in this world that people care about so much, and with this cast, I mean, how could you not be excited? I think, one thing that's nice about this movie is it's about a team up, and I think that it's not as much about my particular vision as all these great people that came together to really try and make something different. So Eric Pearson had written this really interesting flip on what you might expect this film to be, which was about kind of sending these people to kill each other and be thrown away, and developed that with Brian Chapek, our wonderful executive producer. I felt like, what I could bring to it coming off of doing Beef was this idea of really going into a more internal version of that story and trying to get at some character ideas, and especially like in the way that if Sentry the Void is going to be your antagonist, like what should your protagonist be going through that really connects with that we tried to bring, and then eventually brought in a lot of those collaborators from Beef, where Lee Sung-jin came in and did numerous drafts of the script. Grace Yoon, our wonderful production designer, Harry Yoon, our editor, and a whole bunch of wonderful collaborators kind of came together to make that story. And then, of course, Joanna Callow came in, who had written on season 1 of Beef, but also co-created The Bear, and just brought so many more of those character dynamics to life throughout the process. If there is a theme to the movie, it's about isolation and this question of, there's a line that Elena says to Bob at one point that he repeats back to her as the Void, where she says, "We're all alone, all of us," and I think the question of the movie is, is that true, or does it have to be true? Do we have to be alone in this? Like when we're going through something, when we experience shame or thought loops, like do we have to exist in that, in isolation, or through connection, could we maybe find a way out of those things? And, obviously the hope is that through connection, we can get out of there. And, I think that's something that I've certainly experienced. And I have friends that have gone through, different versions of, on a more internal level, some of the big external ideas of what a rich character, Bob, Sentry the Void is, that it felt like we could tie all those things together. And, it was nice. We spoke with Paul Jenkins, who created the character of Robert Reynolds, Sentry the Void, with Jay Lee. And, for him, the character was always a parable for mental health. And so it felt like that was the only way we're going to be honest to that creation, is to take that and run with it and find our own way into what that character was. I mean, I think what was so nice about this film was it felt like it existed in such a contained fashion. It takes place over the course of just a few days, in the modern world of 616, and so it feels like it's in its own little corner of the universe. And then obviously at the end, it has much larger implications for the rest of the world and the universe. But it felt like until we got there, we really had room to play in this kind of, isolated space where we didn't have to worry about too much of that interaction and really could tell a contained story. I think it really felt like, the Thunderbolts are all of us. They're people that, some of whom might have imagined they were destined for greater things or even individual glory. Like that's something that Alexi obviously is very interested in for a lot of the film. John Walker was Captain America, until that went very, very wrong. And so it becomes more about like when things don't work out the way that you imagined, which is something I think would imagine we can all relate to. I certainly can. Where do you go from there, and what can you build from that? And, what and who do you need to find to kind of come out of that place? And could you maybe be something greater as the sum of your parts than being stuck in that isolation? I think part of it is just to have actors this good is always just a privilege as a director. It makes your job very easy. But I think also, to make a good movie, you want to feel like not only that everyone brought their best and an amazing cast and crew in this film, but also that they brought something of themselves into it. And all of these actors care so deeply about their work and about the characters that they portrayed. And so it is that interesting dialogue, because in order to make a movie, you need to have a new conflict, a new want, a new need, new arc for them to play, but it also needs to feel honest to the character that they've also brought to life. And so there was a lot of really interesting discussions in those kind of weeks of rehearsal beforehand, where we didn't really rehearse so much as just go through the script, really talk about where it was heading, like what it was establishing, and how they could sort of adjust it and bring things to it that made it feel more personal to them and to the character that they were so protective of.
Can't call ourselves that.
Thank God.
The Thunderbolts. It's a cool name.